So as a lot of you have shared, there could be chaos, crises, perhaps disruptions. And in fact, I'm very grateful to hear that most of you actually know how to deal or how to overcome those disruptions in life. A lot of things have been changing. And to me, it seems like time has just flew by just like that, and we're hitting August. 8 months pass by just like this. I think one thing about mindfulness is also about slowing down and appreciating things. And you know that by slowing down, it allows you to be more relaxed, allows you to have better perspectives, that you don't have to drive yourself like a slave master. All of us around the world have experienced our own form of lockdown, I believe, or certain kind of restrictions. And it also shows that sometimes it's not that our jobs demand us to do so much, because you know that you're not working perhaps as hard if you're at home. And did anyone complain? Did your boss or your teammates complain? You see. So sometimes it's us, we ourselves could be the ones pushing ourselves very hard within. We perhaps when you get into the office, you realize that you need to work more. The environment really creates the change. But most important of all is to remember how you have slowed down during the lockdown. And it is still part of you that you can bring into different areas of your life. The world will definitely pick up. It has its own time to pick up. But what do you want to bring from the lockdown? The positive things that you have noticed. What do you want to bring forward? Last Sunday, we talked about beginning anew, how you can continue in your own way, continue beautifully. So there are a lot of things that we can bring with us. Sometimes we bring our baggages, and our baggages can become a burden for people, especially the people around us. Or when we are not mindful, I'm not perfect either. I have been a victim of my own rage and my own anger as well. Those are heavy stuff to carry, and they can spill to the people around us and sometimes the decisions that we want to make. But most important of all is to know that things are impermanent and that suffering is a part of life. There's not one person in life that has never suffered before. There's not one person in life that will never face any form of obstacles. But it's how we want to embrace suffering. How do we want to meet the difficulties in life? Or perhaps that you may be trapped in certain repetitive loops, or patterns that are happening. It could be from yourself, it could be from your circumstances. But how do you want, not just to deal with it, how do you want to approach it? That's the question to ask. And in order to approach it, you have to bring your full presence into it. So are you going to bring your mindful presence, that comes about when we slow down? Or are you going to bring that reactivity into it? As long as we are not fully enlightened, we will experience suffering in our minds. And it's how we want to befriend those suffering. How do you want to see those suffering? As many of you have shared, that you know that transformation has begun and there are lessons that will be learned. So it shows that, it proves that without the mud, the lotus can never bloom. Awakening is built, it happens when there is the end of suffering. And how do you put an end to suffering? First, you need to know what is suffering. You need to notice it, not to push it away. Of course, someone who is fully enlightened, like the Buddha, of course, he still faced problems. There were a lot of problems that he had to deal with during his time in ancient India. But he was able to keep his peace 24/7 because he has fully understood the nature of suffering. He knew how to approach it. That's why suffering could not arise in his mind. But is he aware of what's right and what's wrong, what's good or bad? Obviously, he's aware. He's not just like stoned, like I'm stoned, I don't know anything, I don't suffer. Sometimes people can get into the idea of escapism, that they just want to dump everything away, run away and go hide somewhere up to meditate like a hermit. I mean, it's okay if you want to hide away sometimes, for a few hours, for a few days, that's fine. But you know that you still have to deal with it because you're bringing them along with you. We are always continuing. And each and every moment we can begin anew. And how do we want to begin anew? We need to really have a very clear understanding of what's within. Some people say that they want to declutter. So you need to know if there's a mess first before you need to declutter. So this meditation, I want to invite all of you to really keep an open mind and just remember 3 things. 2, if you can't remember the third. Number 1, just be mindful that everything is transient. Even the states of happiness, even a good meditation, it's all transient. Suffering itself, anything that happens is transient as well. It doesn't last forever. The things that you like and that you want to achieve, is there 100% chance that you can achieve them? What happens when you can't achieve them? And even if you have achieved them, how long do they last? There's always effort that you need to put in, to sustain the things that you have achieved. Even if you can get into deep meditation as well, it has to be sustained. In fact, every single thing in life, there's nothing that you can grasp onto. It's like trying to hook onto a cloud and wishing that it will glide you across the earth. The more you try to grasp onto it, the more tired you feel, the more frustrated you feel, and perhaps even dejected. But do we have to live dejected, or do we want to live with more understanding? To accept things as they are, the nature of reality. So that is anicca. Things are transient in nature. They are impermanent. They are all subject to change. Even yourself and your loved ones, everything around you is subject to change. And the second thing is to be mindful or to be aware of dukkha. Dukkha is translated as suffering, but it also can mean the death of things, that things will go bad. The vegetables in your refrigerator will rot. Your body will rot one day. Things will crumble eventually, both the good and the bad. And clinging onto them is not going to bring you lasting happiness. That's why we say that all compounded things is dukkha. They don't bring about a lasting form of satisfaction. That's why it's also translated as unsatisfactory. Suffering, or that it's just meant to crumble in its own way. But we don't have to freak out that things are going to crumble. You have come so far in life that you may have realized by now that sometimes when things crumble, it's the best thing that has ever happened to you. While it's crumbling, it may feel scary, perhaps a lot of suffering, you may feel lost even after it's crumbled. But after you move along, you realize and you look back, it's like, wow, that's one of the best things that has ever happened to me in life. So the Buddha never said that everything is suffering. He never said that. He said that they are subject to dukkha. And what does it mean by when they are subject to suffering? Is when we try to cling on to them, thinking that they're going to last forever. So that's dukkha. And the third thing is to be mindful of anatta. It means the selfless nature of things, the non-self of things. Since things do not last, sabbe sankhara, anicca, right? All compounded phenomena are impermanent, they're transient, they're subject to change. And then if you cling onto them, they're going to bring about a lot of suffering. And you do not need to cling onto them because you do not need to really chase after them because they don't bring ultimate satisfaction at the end of the day. And so how can you say that they are solid and independent, that they exist on their own? How can you say that they're going to be like an entity forever when it's constantly changing? Just look at your bodies right now. Were you like having a feeling like you had an 18-year-old strong body and then all of a sudden you feel like you're 40 years old? No. It has its cause. Each and every single moment is changing, it's aging on its own, bit by bit, leading up to the changes that you're experiencing now, to the health issues if you have, or issues brought up by age. Nothing can withstand time. No, it's compounded. So you can't say that it's just one body that exists on its own. So how can you see that as yourself? And if you have a soul or permanent consciousness, I would like to ask you, how old is it? If you die, what's it going to look like? The age that you pass away, the times when you were younger, or maybe looking like your previous life. That may make sense, right? But do you even know what your previous life looks like? Exactly to the T. You don't. So what is it that we're really trying to cling on to at the end of the day? So anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Even your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts, they're ultimately not you. They're all conditioned, by society and by yourself. So they're all just compounded, and very conveniently we say that this is me, this is myself. But how come sometimes you can go and tell people and say that, hey, I'm a changed person. I just rebranded myself. I'm different now, you see? So although things are impermanent and they are dukkha and they are anatta, we don't have to look at it with pessimism. And it's not to be overly optimistic about it as well. It is to bring about a true sense of realism into it. Be realistic. These are the teachings of the Buddha. We avoid the extremes of eternalism and nihilism, and it's the middle way. The middle way is not to balance both. If it was balanced, the Buddha would have said balance. It means to transcend both extremes and to have a very clear view, very clear understanding of how things are, how they come to be. So leave your meditation as open as you can today. Just allowing your breath to be an anchor for you into the present moment. And for those of you who already started closing your eyes and meditating, just gently open your eyes right now and look at me. For I'm going to share the mudra. Continue breathing, so you're just changing posture. So the right goes above your left. This mudra used for samadhi, and put your right over your left like that. Just leave it there. Okay, right above the left. And you can gently close your eyes. I hope all of you have gotten it. Mudra like this. And just place it there. Place it on your feet. On your lap, in front of you, in front of your dantian, or just resting on where your feet or your thighs are. Be comfortable. And just setting the intention that you're going to allow each in breath to bring you back to yourself, and each out breath to release all forms of control and expectations. Rooted, being rooted in the present moment, returning to the safe refuge and island of mindfulness, far away from the storms and the oceans, breathing comfortably and establishing oneself in concentration, samadhi. And you may be able to feel the rising and falling sensations around your abdomen expanding as you inhale and falling back in as you exhale. You may lengthen your breathing, especially on the out breath. Make sure that your out breath is complete. You may even notice that there is a pause in between your in breath and your out breath. And just allow your breathing to guide you deeper into this safe island of mindfulness. Whatever arises in your mind, whatever appears at the front of your mental screen, you contemplate how they are transient, how they are subject to dukkha, that they're not ultimately satisfactory, and how it doesn't make sense to over identify with them, thinking that they're solid. And if nothing pops up and there's just the breathing, then you bring that contemplation into your body. Every phenomena is anicca, dukkha, anatta. If everything is subject to change and to pass away, to fall apart, does it make sense to grasp onto them so tightly? Does it make sense to try to reject them? And if nothing can be clung onto or should be clung onto, you can make a firm resolve right here and right now to begin anew by relinquishing your grasping, by letting go of them. In order to help you to anchor deeper, so remember that your breath is a natural anchor. And the other thing is to rest your gaze forward, looking into the back of your eyelids, and place your tongue on your palate. So it's not a focus, it's just a relaxed gaze forward endlessly. Even every mental state in itself is subject to change, subject to fall apart, and perhaps even conditioned. But with mindful wisdom, you can relinquish them. Simply disengage and contemplate. Anatta means not self. Nothing is a self. Nothing belongs to a self. Nothing is yourself. But there is also a practice dimension of anatta that is non-self. In the situations in your life, how are you going to practice non-self? For non-self is also interbeing. How are you going to make things work? If you can change them, although they do not last, what kind of approach are you going to encounter suffering? That ultimately leads to peace within yourself that is unconditioned, but a peace that is born out of wisdom, to reinstate the awareness of the unconditioned state. As you fall deeper and deeper within yourself, things may surface, opportunities for contemplation. At the same time, allow your mind, your body to settle back into the elements, to the changing elements of the earth, the mountain, the river of feelings, the air of thoughts, and the fire of coming and going, of becoming and unbecoming. And your mind to settle back into space, the five great elements. In order to drop back into the interbeing and constant change of the five elements, there is a breathing technique. Inhaling consciously, and at the end of the in-breath, you let go completely, meaning you let go of the need to breathe out. So you breathed in consciously. At the end of the in-breath, just let go of everything completely. And you may notice that your out-breath will happen on its own very slowly. And you will release together with the out-breath. Breathing in with full intent, end of in-breath, let go completely. And as the out-breath sips out by itself, right on it to release together. Like an expansion. And your out breath does not have to be complete because you are just releasing together with it, dispersing with it. Just the in breath. Only full intent on the in breath. At the end of the in breath, you say this mantra: I return to my true nature. I return to my true nature. Now you let go of even the in-breath. Just returning to the true nature. Letting go of the mantra and everyone and everything return to their true nature and drop the mind. Drop how the body breathes and drop how the mind functions. Letting go of the dropping. No coming, no going, no after, and no before. I hold you close to me and I release you to be so free. For I am in you and you are in me. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering and sorrow. Breathing in this space, allow your mind to bring up a painful event that still causes you suffering or reactivity. It can be a recent one or an unprocessed old one. And internally identify the emotion tied to it by calling it out internally. Like, like this is fear, this is anger, this is pain, this is grief, this is how it feels like. But it is not me. And if you can notice it being in a part of your body, you place a palm over that part of your body and invite it to breathe with you. This is a moment of suffering. Everyone goes through suffering in life. And I don't have to identify myself with it. It is not me. Therefore, I do not need to reject it either. And for the next 3 breaths, allow your breathing to soothe it, soothing it. Next, you allow it to be there. And finally, you release it, not by breathing it out, but by releasing your attachment and your clinging onto it, and your ideas of how it should be or should not be. Just soothing, allowing, and releasing. Soothe, allow, release. Remember these three words. And reset yourself, reset your mind, let go of your meditation. And your eyes will know when to open themselves. Those who need to leave first, you may share first. So open sharing and questions. This is part of the spiritual independence program that is based on everyone's collective sharing and energies. I decided to just bring it out, especially a lot of you are learning chanting right now. So it's good to be mindful of the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, to reflect on them. And remember the three words: soothe, allow, and release. That you can practice those when you're experiencing heaviness or suffering. So I'm going to open up the circle. So not everyone is obliged to share. So if you're not going to share, you can just type pass, P-A-S-S. Thanks for sharing, everyone. Yeah, this I like what you shared, Sharon. Yeah, thanks for that. It's nourishing to hear as well. Self-compassion occurs naturally, when we know how to relinquish. It's just like wisdom. Everything just falls into place. That's why earlier on, prior to the session, I said that falling and crumbling could be the best thing that has ever happened to you. Because it's also about falling back into peace, falling back into self-compassion, to let everything, like the rain, to fall down on you. And it can be a good rain. When we can let go of resistance. And in regards to the breathing, the part where you inhale and then hold your, you notice the pause and then just release on its own. I believe that's relatively easy for all of you to do. And in fact, that is actually one of the secrets to healing and manifestations as well. I've tested and proven that before. The part where you let go of the in-breath, it may be difficult for some of you because that is where the subtle breathing happens. I don't know if you notice that the first step, when you just inhale with intention and allow the out-breath to be just the out-breath on its own, do you notice that you don't exactly breathe out completely, right? Because you're not really controlling. And the next in-breath will flow in by itself, right? Because you're still, there's step one, you're still putting an intention into it. That's why you may feel the in-breath being quite deep, or the length is longer. But when I say let go of the in-breath, what you may have noticed was the breath was just coming in just a little bit, right? Am I not breathing right or wrong? But in fact, there's a subtle breathing. It means the energy is actually moving in the body. Some of you may be breathing through your pulse. Some of you may not even feel the breath, but the mind has not been able to recognize it. So that will take time. But it's great that when you will notice that you can't follow, then you just go back to the previous step, and deepen. That's fine. So like some of you shared, it's a self-compassionate practice on its own. And looping, the whole looping thing, the narratives, noticing the narratives coming up in our minds. These are just buried things that are buried within ourselves, that we need to process. Perhaps some of you shared that you need to yell it out, right? And maybe after yelling out, you just feel great about it. Because sometimes we could be serving our ego by trying to speak up for ourselves and not speaking up for the truth. When we speak up for ourselves, it pushes on the resentment, the anger, the suffering. It continues because it's pushing out from the ego and not so much from the truth itself already. So sometimes release comes from shouting, it could be a very face-to-face acknowledgement and just pushing it out. And it's just part of a way of releasing it instead of latching onto it and releasing it to someone. Right. But that's a beautiful thing. If you have not read this book, get this book. I think some of you have read it. It's a great book, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So I could lend it out as well. I think there's e-copies as well. This practice in itself is actually vipassana practice, where you contemplate. You bring about insight. Vipassana means to look deeply, into things within us. Soothing, allowing, and releasing, SAR. If you remember the previous pandemic, you remember it. SAR, SARS. It's just lacking of an S. Because the reason I brought those three words out is that to just give you a tiny opportunity to see that you can actually practice SAR on its own. So that when you're familiar with this practice and in moments of suffering, you can come back to yourself in that. It is being, actually that was not my intention. The original one came from Christian Neff, from Mindful Self-Compassion, MSc. It's actually soften, soothe, and allow. To be honest, I memorized it wrongly. So I said soothe, allow, and release, but somehow it worked. So yeah, glad it worked out. I'm not saying I'm better, but because I'm doing it in a Buddhist way, so there's a whole spiritual meaning to release, right? Kristen Neff and who's the other doctor? I forgot. One male, one female. They came out of MSc, and one of them is a Dharma practitioner for many years. So a lot of things from MSc were taken from Buddhism in itself, to formulate it. But they can't go so deep when it's so secular. And because we are going deeper and deeper with each week, I guess that's why it evolved into soothe, allow, and release, because we have really softened ourselves, right, prior to that. Right. So just remember SAR. I prefer that. We'll trademark it one day. Don't worry, guys. Okay. Any more questions if any of you have?
Can we use the mudra and meditate whenever we want to?
Okay, thanks for the question. Yes, you can use the mudra. I have no idea I know what the mudra means, but yes, you can just meditate with the mudra. It can steal your mind really very quickly, and it has anti-aging effects as well. So I won't review whose secret practice is this. Okay, some of you might know that person. This person practices it in secret, this mudra. So it was Rishi who revealed it to me. because I was asking Rishi about this practitioner, and then Rishi said, "Oh, this is this person's secret mudra. Just go and practice it." you know, uh, don't do it in public. That's all. Okay. Yeah. Personally, I find it very grounding. So sometimes when I go to the coffee shop to have supper with people, and then I will just, because I'm seated like that, and then I just put it under the table, and I find it really establishing myself in the now very well. So yes, go ahead and practice it. All right. Thank you. So I mean, this whole session is about learning how to face yourself, how to deal with yourself. So whatever we see, right, it's because it is already there, waiting for us to see, waiting for us to process, waiting for us to reconcile with Dharma, not through the ego. Just remember that. And always, when you need to speak up for the truth, not for yourself. Otherwise, you will suffer. Take care, everyone.